New York City Department of Education sponsors kids programming featuring 12 minutes of a drag queen named Lil Miss Hot Mess. He dances, he sings, not very well, but I guess he wears a wig. Governor Cuomo, unsure whether to grope him or to lock him away in an old folks' home. I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and this is The Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. All right, every week we showcase just a few of the endless stories impacting kids in schools across the country. But we do more than just talk about the issues. FreedomProject Academy is now enrolling students for fall. FPA provides a classical education built on Judeo-Christian values for kids from kindergarten through high school, all virtual, all in your living room. This is not like the way the public schools do it. We do it with enthusiasm. We do it with classmates involved from all across the country. The real way to bring an actual classroom into your front room and make it exciting for your kids. Request a free information packet at freedomforschool.com. That's freedomforschool.com. All righty, today we start in New York City, that bona fide city of craziness, where a PBS children's show recently featured a drag queen reading a book about drag queens dancing to children as young as 3 years old. And I think the best way to introduce this story is just to show you Lil Miss Hot Mess.
The jewels on the drag queen go bling, 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 bling. The jewels on the drag queen go bling, bling, bling. All through the town. The shoulders on the drag queen go shimmy, 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 shimmy. The shoulders on the drag queen go shimmy, 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 all through the town.
And you watch the talentless, humorless, childish nature of this, and you ask yourself, what is the purpose of this? Why there are 1,000 ways to educate kids, 1,000 ways to... What's wrong with Muppets, for God's sake? Because I'm sorry, that dude just looks like a great big Muppet to me, but not nearly as talented as the Muppets. An untalented Muppet is what he looks like. What is this need to expose little children to men dressed up like women? What is the purpose of this? What purpose does from the social justice perspective, what purpose does this serve? On the one hand, if you want a real transgender person, put one up there. The shoulders on the trans person goes blah, blah, blah. Why do you take a guy who appropriates womanhood, not because he identifies as a woman, but because he's being campy and, I don't know, having a good time?
I don't know. And the thing is, they're putting this, he put this to the wheels on the bus.
Right.
What's wrong with the wheels on the bus? Everyone, you could identify as whatever the heck you want to, can sing the wheels on the bus. And my son loves that book. So it's, he said, the jewels and bling, 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 and it should be the lights going blink, blink, blink. But no.
Are you going to?
We have to.
Are you going to get him the hormone therapy?
Absolutely not.
Now that he's expressed that he's not a boy,
clearly he hasn't.
Clearly he's not. It's a cry for hormone therapy.
The wheels on the bus. If your child likes it, means you must have the book called "The Hips on the Drag Queen Go." Swish, swish, swish. That's the entire book title.
Don't you love it? They have Asian, white, and black drag queens badly drawn on the cover.
Okay, you can write that book. Good for you. You have a book. What have you? But a children's show on PBS, which is a public broadcasting system, they are the ones featuring this. Your tax dollars are going to this. This is going in schools. New York City Department of Ed is backing it, and that's where we start to have real issues.
I just still, sorry for being so incredulous. What are you trying to accomplish with this?
We still have not found that out.
No, it's men dressed like women. Now, they're not men who are women. So you can't really call them transitioning. You can't really call them transgender. They're doing this not because they're identifying completely with what they've become. There's just a long-standing tradition of men wearing women's clothes. And so somehow now we have to mainstream this to little kids. Why?
No one knows. No one knows.
What is the purpose of this?
And again, I go back to wheels on the bus is universal. Why is it this need for drag queens to make everything about their bodies and glitz and glam, and
I suspect
that's like all they have.
I suspect the left has realized something, but they don't want to admit it, because if they admit it, it's going to cut their own argument. They realize this is my theory on this and how disingenuous the left is. They realize that little children, like the kind that are being targeted in these drag queen shows, kids from 3 to about 8, 9, those kids, the left knows, are too young to be able to differentiate between men and women. Mm-hmm. So having an actual transgender person talk to them, they wouldn't be able to tell that they would think it's actually a woman or a man. Mm-hmm. What they want to do instead with these young children is get them used to men in women's clothing. And so this undercuts this admits something they don't want to admit. If we put actual transgender people, serious transitioning people, in front of 5, 6, and 7-year-olds, they would not notice a difference. They would think that if they're men who transitioned into women, they would think they were women. If it were women who transitioned into men, they would think they were men, because little kids are literal. Now you're putting in front of little kids men consciously, overtly, hyperbolically, clown show way are pretending to be women. I think that undercuts an argument. Little kids don't know enough about their own gender. They're incapable of being abstract enough to decide that there's some other gender. So rather than putting transgender people, which would not in one way or another make a political point, having men dressed up as gaudily as possible gets you starting on the brainwash camp, gets you starting down the road to indoctrination. You're already convincing. Why else? Why else, of all the things they could be foregrounding for tiny kids, why bad, untalented men in really garish women's costumes? What other possible purpose are you trying to make?
Well, and that's the thing. And so this drag queen actually said the purpose about being a drag queen, it's being a drag queen is about being bold, shining bright, and showing a little bit of bravery, being willing to step outside the box and to dance to our own beat sometimes. But you're doing that to little children, as you made that point.
And you're doing it
How
in the costume.
brave,
and you're doing it in the costume of somebody else's beat, right?
Yeah, and you're basically co-opting a child's childhood of these, songs and names and everything.
Yep.
Of
little kids,
and co-opting that, and you're being brave.
Little kids like to sing and to perform and to dance and to be noticed, and they like to wear costumes. And there you have it, right? You're taking something that is an aberration of childhood, a fleeting moment where a little kid will put on mommy's shoes or a little boy will put on mommy's hat and prance around, and by the time he's 7 years old, it's completely forgotten. You're trying to normatize that. You're trying to freeze that as one logical step on the obvious road to transitioning. It really is kind of insidious, because there's no other way you can phrase or parse or explain what they're doing. This is part of a broader mission. It's tedious. It's exploitative, but it's not going to stop anytime soon, apparently.
We've talked about critical race theory. We will continue to talk about critical race theory, and we begin now with one state actually coming out and saying, you know what, enough is enough with critical race theory. We have Tennessee, the state of Tennessee, where their state house and Senate voted along party lines, obviously, to ban the teaching of critical race theory in their schools. And their governor, Bill Lee, is expected to sign it. So now teachers have to make a choice, because the teachers get to make choices. Students make no choices. They either must deny that they actually ever taught critical race theory, or they're going to just double down on it. And so in terms of those who are choosing the denial, we have one of the newspapers there, the Tennessean, which wrote an article called Critical Race Theory Isn't Taught in Tennessee Schools. Here's what is being taught about race. And the article gives Elizabeth Tullis, the spokesperson for the Tennessee State Board of Education, saying that Tennessee academic standards for social studies don't contain any mention of critical race theory.
Yeah, what nonsense.
The standards don't have it.
This is utter garbage. They have done what they did with Common Core. They've given CRT, critical race theory, only now means any piece of paper, any book, any text, any manual that has the words CRT on it, critical race training. What they've done is they've got a whole bunch of subsidiary stuff written by all kinds of other anti-racist organizations. It's technically not Common Core because it doesn't say Common Core, but is it Common Core under another name? Yes. The fact that the progressive left has to parse things this way, this is what used to be called equivocation. Remember back in the old days of Shakespeare and when
they don't. Most people
No, they don't.
but-
They're not going to know this.
Yes.
Equivocation, right? This idea that you could actually lie under oath by not telling the truth, right?
There
It was practiced first by Jesuit priests when Queen Elizabeth I England was trying to round up and persecute priests. They'd been banned from England, banned performing the sacraments in England. So when these Jesuit priests would be caught, they convinced themselves that it wasn't a lie, it was an equivocation if you refused to say things or did say things that made it impossible to see the truth. It was a form of lying. And that's exactly here what's going on with these educrats, right? We don't have critical race theory. I remember walking into schools back when we were fighting Common Core 7 and 8 years ago, and we would ask to see the curriculum. And they guaranteed us, flat out guaranteed us, none of this is Common Core. Look, here's the books. You don't see the name Common Core anywhere. And then when you open up to the very back of the book and you scan through all the credits and everything, you see it, right? Aligned with Common Core, based on the Common Core standards, derivative of the Common Core standards, right? So technically it's not critical race theory. It's radical anti-race theory, all born from its illegitimate mother, critical race theory. It's all the same stuff. And go ahead. So what are they? They're not teaching that in Tennessee schools, according to the Tennessee Board of Education. What are they teaching?
Well, according to at least Elizabeth Tullis, again, spokesperson for the Tennessee State Board of Education, these standards do, however, contain content on slavery, Jim Crow laws, the civil rights movement, and more.
That makes it sound innocent. In other words, it's just history, right?
Yes, and according to the Department of Education spokesperson Victoria Robinson, she says that the department has not received any complaints about schools teaching critical race theory. Oh.
Well, let's
maybe
see what
they
happens.
haven't. Maybe they haven't.
Let's see what happens in August, because I'm telling you right now that this curriculum is critical race theory, and what they're going to do is they're going to beat kids over the head with it. White supremacy, white privilege.
So this is the same Tennessee newspaper, by the way, the Tennessean, that also published an op-ed by Dr. Michelle Christian and Dr. Gianni Lewis titled "Tennessee Legislature Showed Lack of Knowledge with Critical Race Theory Ban." And as you can see, it says that ultimately the education bill attempts to prohibit any meaningful discussions of racism, the history of white supremacy, and the power of resistance. Well then, it also, if you look in the rest of the article by their op-ed, they then continue saying it uses fear and intimidation to silence freedom of speech. This bill that we're going to get to in a second. It marginalizes the contributions of racial justice scholars and activists and minimizes the voices and experiences of Black, Indigenous, and people of color in Tennessee. That's what they're all claiming. Okay,
well,
what does the bill actually state, though? That you cannot say that one race or sex is superior. So this bill is trying to get that you cannot say that one race or sex is superior, or that any individuals are inherently privileged, racist, sexist, or oppressive because of their race or sex, and you can't teach that a person should receive adverse treatment due to their race or sex.
Look at number 2. They want to be able to say white people are guilty. This bill says you can't. You can't call somebody guilty on the basis of their skin. By the same token, you can't hold blacks accountable for anything based on the nature of their skin color. That's a win-win. You can't, really, they're upset. These idiots are upset that you can't say one race or sex is superior to another.
That is correct. So they actually had to make a bill and pass it saying that you will not teach that one race is sex is superior.
You're not allowed now in Tennessee. Go back. You're not allowed in Tennessee to say that moral character is determined by race. That you're a good person, you're Black. If you're bad, you can't say that anymore. And this is a lose-lose for Tennessee.
You know, once upon a time, you had to be responsible, you had to know something to actually attend a college. Nowadays, who cares? Everyone gets in. It's a free-for-all, as with so much else, as we know with the current generation, Gen Z. But the University of California has announced that the system is going to stop considering the SAT and ACT scores in decisions for admissions and scholarships. So if you wanted to go to college, you had to take the ACT or the SAT, depending on, what part of the country you were in. Had to show that, maybe in math you knew something, or maybe in history you knew something, science, reading, all of that, writing. Not anymore, at least at the University of California. Now, this is per actually a settlement, which said that for students applying for entry between fall 2021 and spring 2025, no University of California campus will consider SAT or ACT scores in determining whether to offer admission. SAT and ACT scores, if submitted by students, will not be provided to admissions readers.
So there's a couple of things here. One, I feel no sympathy at all for the ACT and the SAT. These tests for a long time standardized. They were complicit with organizations like Common Core to change the standards.
Ooh.
Yes.
Who's the head of the College Board?
Would that be one of the guys who was the major player of Common Core? What's his name?
David Coleman.
David Coleman. So I don't feel sympathetic because for a lot of years now, the SAT and the ACTs have been more or less complicit with these radical changes in education. They're not still measuring basic knowledge. Now they're beginning to measure filtered standards, right? Politicized standards. They've become politicized as well. So I don't mind them going away. I think standardized tests are a bad idea. You don't need federal tests to figure out what's going on in a classroom. And part of the problem we have with education is too much control is by the bureaucrats in Washington and not enough between real teachers and real students trying to learn. So I'd get rid of it anyway. Having said that, this just before we went on the air here, I've got another story that I marked down for next week. This is about California, but this new story that came out says that 60% of American universities have already done this. So much bigger than California. 60% of America's universities apparently have done this as well, and it makes sense. The reason they're doing this is because everybody gets in. Think about this and understand what this means. College is not college if everybody goes. Higher learning is no longer higher learning if everybody goes. If everybody goes, anyone who applies, regardless of how bad their test scores is, how bad their GPA is, how bad their class rank is, in the name of inclusion, which is the only thing our idiotic universities and middle schools and high schools care about, inclusion. We're a racist country unless everybody gets to do everything else at the same time. And so if we're going to take everybody, and that's what the school, 60% of American schools have already surrendered, college is now just an extension of high school. Everyone who wants to will go. Everyone who comes will be paid. Student loans, breaks in schooling to come. Anyone who wants it will get it. And that means once we get everybody here in the fall, we cannot teach to the highest levels. We cannot teach higher ed because most of the kids we just brought in can't do it. So we're going to have to go back to sophomore year in high school, which is where most of these kids are in reading, writing, and math, and then move forward. Take a year to do sophomore year, take another year in college to recreate what should be junior year of high school, and then the third year, you recreate what would have been senior year, and maybe, just maybe, half of your kids will be ready to do senior high school work by the time they're graduating from college. Congratulations, America. You just extended the American public schools from first grade all the way through college. That's all basic public school education now. And as Joe Biden says, let's go back to mandatory pre-K. From the time they're 3 till the time they graduate as undergraduates and they're 22 and 23, that's all basically public school mandated education. Everybody gets the same thing. How soon before they turn their attention to graduate programs? Look, everybody got a degree, whether they earned it or not. That means anybody who wants to goes to medical school. Anybody, inclusion, anybody who wants to gets to go to law school. Anybody who at all wants to gets to get an MA in teaching. You just have to despair when you see what the educrats are doing to education. One size fits all, outcome-based socialist education. Everyone goes to college if they want to or not, if they can or not. College has become nothing but high school. The only thing you can do besides weep is take a look back in our history before this garbage entered our school and see the kind of minds American education used to, or world education really turned out when it was based on private schools, right? The ability of people to educate themselves in serious ways. You now have the story of Enlightenment figure Adam Smith, the great economist, born in 723, died in 1790. He was a Scottish economist and philosopher, a pioneer of political economy, major figure during the Scottish Enlightenment, very much a self-learned man in many ways, also known as the father of economics, right? Big time. Take a look at some of our quotes today. Quote, from Adam Smith, no society can surely be flourishing and happy, of which the far greater part of the members are poor and miserable. This is why socialism fails, right? Capitalist and free markets, while it does have a lower, less prosperous class, you do have some poor people here, although no one's starving to death in this country. But those socialist countries where the majority of people have nothing, that's what the left wants for us. When you have too many of them, when the majority of the people don't have any, when you liquidate the middle class, no society can be flourishing and happy. How about this quote? Little else is needed to carry a state to the highest degree of wealth from the lowest barbarism. Here's what you need. All you need: peace, easy taxes, and the tolerable administration of justice. All you need is no state of war, easy taxes, people paying relaxed rates, and finally, a administration of justice that tolerates people with different worldviews. We haven't had that in a long time in this country. Our taxes are not easy. Our government is anything but neutral in the administration of justice. And it's been a long time that we haven't been at war. And finally, this quote: what can be added to the happiness of a man who is in health, out of debt, and has a clear conscience? Beautiful. What does anyone need who has those three things? What are they again, Mike? They are health, no debt, and a clear conscience.
All right, those are the stories for the day. And if you have a question for us, please feel free to drop it in the mailbag by simply emailing askduke@fpeusa.org. And of course, if you enjoy our content, please support our show and join the Patriot Club. Your one-time $99 tax-deductible donation keeps this show going. Simply visit patriotclub.us to sign up today. That's patriotclub.us. And of course, as a special thank you, we will ship you our signature tumbler so you can enjoy some freedom.
Well, actually, it's the post office who does the shipping, dummy. And that wraps up the show. For Freedom Project, I'm Duke. She's Katie. And she thinks Shinka would know this. She's married to a postman. Stay educated, my friends.